Hello, welcome to Our Time. There's an old joke about having a good head for radio, meaning, of course, that you're not very good looking and it's better to hide behind a microphone with your voice. Well, that's not the case for our next guest, who's better known on radio as That Radio Chick. Welcome to Our Time, Cheryl Lee.
Thank you so much for having me, Malcolm.
Oh, it's a pleasure, because we've been swapping shows, so to speak.
Yes, normally I'm the interviewer, so it's a little bit weird being the interviewee.
There you go. Well, you get a chance to talk rather than me, because I can talk, you know.
Really?
Yes.
We've got a huge edit job coming up with our chat.
That's all right. Look, you didn't start as a radio chick, did you?
No, absolutely not.
What did you start off doing in your life?
Most of my working career I've actually been in accounting or administration. Quite boring, really. Numbers, figures. Yeah.
Well, they're important at the end of the day, though.
Absolutely.
But how did you get interested in radio?
Well, I think there were a few little things that happened along the way that piqued my interest. The very first thing was entering a competition on Baz and Pilco's show when I was a teenager. Their dare of the day, I was dared to wear a bikini from home at Windvale to their radio station in the city. It was winter, it was cold, I did it.
Okay.
And they gave me $100, which, you know, back then was a lot of money.
$1,000 almost.
And then also won a Triple M competition where Kim, Ali and Dezeldi, if you remember them, great breakfast show in Adelaide, came and did their breakfast show from our lounge room.
This is how crazy radio used to be.
That's right.
Not so much anymore. Don't have so much fun on commercial radio stations.
No, and it was called Pack to the Rafters, and then they sent my family and I to Sydney to watch a taping of Pack to the Rafters. Yeah. So that was great, but it wasn't really until I retired a few years ago. I say retired, I still had five. We still had 5 children at home.
I was going to say, retired from what? Being a mum? That's a bit difficult.
So, not necessarily a lady of leisure, but giving up full-time employment. And I started a little radio show with another school mum and absolutely loved it and have gone. Now I volunteer for 4 radio stations. I also volunteer for Support Act SA as their fundraising coordinator, and on their committee.
Well, we'll talk about that in a minute.
Sure.
But having the 5 children and still working as a full-time mum and having all of the things that you have to do with kids, run them here, run them there, how did you manage?
Run them everywhere. Well, I think you just do what you have to do, don't you, when you have children. It was absolutely, you know, busy. There's no denying that. Absolute chaos, you know, crisis management a lot of the time.
But has that given you the ability to do what you're now doing, do you think?
Possibly, quite possibly. You had to have, you know, systems in place, but you also had to be flexible. I was very lucky that my father lived nearby, so quite often it would be, I'll do the netball, you do the cricket, you do this, I'll do that. And he was a great Uber driver and very helpful.
Without the money at the end.
Yeah.
Yes.
For the love of it.
Yes. Well, you know, so much in life, if you don't love it, you're not living your life to the fullest extent, really, when you think about it. We all have to love what we do, otherwise life is not nice.
That's right. If you love what you do, you never work a day in your life. Isn't that what they say?
As they say.
Yeah.
Well, you started off with, as you said, a friend doing the radio thing. Of course, now, I suppose, people are doing exactly that by doing the podcasts.
Yes.
But you're doing podcasts too, aren't you?
I do a podcast as well. It was sort of almost like a natural progression from, I interview a lot of people and, you know, that has been fantastic. I've met some of the heroes that I listened to and watched perform as I grew up, and I
So it's primarily
pinched
music?
myself. Yeah. Yes, I did have a show called Disgracefully Graceful, which was all about ageing disgracefully.
Who would want to age disgracefully? I mean to say, who would?
So that is one of my passions, as well as the music side, because I found as you get older, you do tend to get a little bit invisible. You walk into a shop and the assistants don't see you, And then I heard that, being lonely is more detrimental to your health than cigarette smoking.
Yes, that's the current thought. Yep.
And so many people retire and don't fill their lives with other things, and there's so
I think
many
the problem
ideas.
is when you're working, you're usually working with other people, and they become an extended family. Whether you like them or not, they still are like an extended family. And then the idea of total retirement, like stopping working completely and sitting around looking at the wallpaper sort of thing, it's not the way to live the rest of your life.
No, definitely not. And there's plenty that you can do to stop yourself getting isolated from your community. And they don't all have to cost money.
No.
Yeah.
And volunteering is a great way to do that.
Absolutely.
But volunteering in a form where you're meeting people constantly is a great way to both improve your education and just to feel good about life.
Absolutely. I find that all the volunteers that I know, through all the volunteer work that I've been doing, everybody gets more out of their volunteering than what they put in.
Because you're working with a team of other people usually, and it's a passion, and you're involving yourself more in your passion. So talk about the fundraising passion for...
Support Act?
Yeah, Support Act. It's more or less to raise funds for older musicians who are in trouble.
Pretty
Not
much,
necessarily in trouble, but
not
who need
just
assistance.
Artists, but also roadies, lighting technicians, sound engineers, anybody in the artistic field who may have come on hard times, and especially the older ones. Like, they used to get paid in beer, and a free meal, and there was no such thing as superannuation.
No, absolutely not. Well, I never got superannuation in anything I've ever done, but when you talk about the roadies, for example, they had to live a pretty tough life. It was a heavy life of lifting and being there for ridiculous hours after gigs, packing out, coming early to bump everything in. And I can imagine that their bodies wouldn't have held out for that long. And if that's all you've done all your life, and a lot of them lived a bit on the hard side as well.
That's right. And I think that we should be really proud of our work at Support Act SA, because we've paid for some funerals where the widows have no savings to call upon. And one story that I really love to tell is a gentleman, an Australian man, who lost his arm due to carcinoma, and he was a saxophone player.
Okay.
So Support Act tracked down in Europe a man who makes one-armed saxophones.
Who knew? So
that he could, and we presented it to him, and then he could continue with his craft and continue to perform.
How brilliant. What a great story.
There's great stories, like even just paying for the electricity bill when they've had their power cut off and their child is trying to study for year 12, has no internet. So most of it is anonymous. People can go online and fill in an application form if they need our help. And no one needs to know.
Right. But the group of people that come together, it's, is it weekly, monthly?
We have a fundraising lunch once a month down at the Highway, where we have musicians come and perform for us. We have a raffle. So
that's a hotel complex here in Adelaide?
They kindly give us the room for free.
Well, that's very generous of them, but when you think about it, musicians have helped those institutions, and that's an institution of a hotel. Exactly. Stay in business.
That's right. And it's a win-win, because we all buy lunch and have a wine. We get about 150 people each month, and it's a great day.
And are they ex-performers, musicians, roadies?
Many are from the music industry, but not all. Everyone's welcome.
Right.
Yeah.
If you have an interest in being helpful and meeting people with like-minded adventures in life, let's say.
Exactly. If you'd like to help a great cause, apart from the money that we raise, of course, which is very important, it's also, charity also starts at home, and I think it's really important to get our Adelaide music industry members together. Yes. They can network, they can support each other, so there's a lot more than just the dollars.
That's why the support is in the title. Exactly. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
But getting back to you, so you are doing interviews mostly at home?
Mostly.
And then you go live to air when?
Coast FM on a Monday night, 10 till midnight. I'm in there pressing the buttons, playing the music. Yep.
It's a nice time of night to be doing that.
It's actually quite convenient because you don't ever do much on a Monday night, and if you do go out to dinner, I can still get there on time.
You see this show here in Adelaide on a Monday night.
That's right. You see?
Go out after that.
That's right. So it's quite convenient for me. I get 2 hours to play whatever songs I like, no interruption, no kids going, "Oh, Mum, turn this off." Nice and quiet.
Do you get a reaction from the audience that's listening at that time?
Yes, people are invited to call in if they'd like.
Oh, okay.
We're not talk back, so I can't put them to air.
Right.
But they can have a shout out.
Chat to you about their favourite music, or ask you, why did you play that? Well, let's just take a short break for a moment. We'll be back to talk to Cheryl Lee, the radio chick, Cheryl Lee Crabtree, in just a moment. Cheryl Crabtree, better known as the radio chick, is our guest on this episode of OurTime. Talking about being on radio, how did you learn to work the panels and, make yourself get to air?
Well, the first little radio station was down at McLaren Vale, and as I said, another school mum and I said would be interested in doing a show, and they said you press that button and you press that button and away you go.
Really technical.
So we learnt the hard way and we fluffed up, and our learning curve was like this, but we had a great time.
How did you fluff up? That's interesting when you say that. Only because a lot of people, I think now, they're very comfortable putting stuff on Facebook or Instagram, talking about stuff they believe in and so on. But there's not a lot to stuff up. You just got to use your phone. But when it gets to a broadcast situation, everything is slightly more increased in technology.
Well, it's pretty hard to fluff up, really, but you press that one when you want to speak and you press that one when you want to play the music.
So you're off air for a bit, were you?
Yep, so you can have dead air occasionally when you haven't pressed the right button at the right time. But we only did that a couple of times. And
it's like driving a car.
Yeah, like riding a bike.
You just get used to it. Yeah, I understand that.
Becomes automatic after a while.
So where do you find your guests?
Well, I find out who's coming to town because they usually want to talk. Yep. So, for instance, when Daryl Braithwaite came, I managed to speak to him, and same with Brian Cadd, who has been at the Trinity Sessions on Goodwood Road. He chatted to me as well. So if you know who's doing a tour or releasing an album, they are pretty keen to chat.
Yes.
Yeah. So I just keep an eye out.
And you have a recording studio at home?
Yes, I never did. But when I decided to podcast these interviews, they're all available online. I set up a studio at home so I could have, if they were here, we could do it together at home without having to worry about booking a studio at the radio station. But quite often it's done by Zoom now too. We have the technology.
Well, that's true, but there really is nothing like being face to face with somebody.
Absolutely.
Because we all, like when we're talking together, because I'm reading your face where you've got excitement, and I'm sure you do the same with a radio interview.
Yeah. That's why Zoom is sort of like the second best thing, because at least you can see each other and, as you say, see each other's emotions. It's a little bit trickier when some of the old school artists will still only want to do a phoner. And it's still great, but without seeing them, the conversation doesn't go quite as smooth, it doesn't flow quite as smoothly.
Well, generally they're wanting to promote their concert or their album or their whatever, if we're talking music. So you don't really want to get somebody to ask you too many questions off track. You as the performer, you want to keep bringing you back. Yes, I'll tell you more about my album. I'll tell you more about the tour. I'll tell you where to get tickets. Yeah. But you really want to know what they had for breakfast. Well,
I find out how much...
What did you have for breakfast?
Coffee. staple diet
Okay, coffee for
of a
breakfast.
busy person. I find out how long they've got to chat, and if I have a little bit longer, then I'll start with let's go back before we go forward. For instance, Angry Anderson, I said, how long have you got? And he said, however long you want, and I still couldn't get him off after an hour. Bless
You've
him,
interviewed me, so
yes.
who has the record?
It'll be close between you and Angry.
Yes, okay.
But a very interesting man. I don't think people realise, how much he's done, for disadvantaged people in his career
really
as well.
Has. Yeah. And people like that don't get much of an airing anymore on mainstream television. The fact that we don't have so-called variety or music shows anymore like we used to, we often don't see the reflection of those people on air anymore. Which
Channel
is a real
44
shame.
has got a great music show.
Well, let's talk about that.
We are just about to submit our 4th season. We started off our first 3 seasons called Mega Music, and we've just had a rebrand sort of thing, and our next season is called Rider TV, so stay tuned for that.
Rider TV.
Yeah.
Because most musicians have a rider, and the rider means they want a lot of alcohol and food backstage.
That's right. And speaking of which, I interviewed a friend of yours the other day, and he wanted me to say hello. Do you remember Wes Carr?
Of course I do.
Of course you do.
Of course.
Yeah.
I was telling somebody a story about Wes Carr just yesterday. He's still Wesley Carr to me.
Yeah.
He was a young man. He would have been about 11 or 12, and we were running in shopping malls the junior modelling quest, of all odd things for us to be doing. That's what we were doing. And Wes came to every single quest.
Yeah.
And he didn't win any time, but we gave him an encouragement award, which were classes. And he then performed in quite a lot of the pantos I used to do and other shows I used to do. And I remember he came back from Sydney, he moved to Sydney with his dad, and came back and did some concerts with us at the Festival Theatre with the school. Yeah.
Well, he remembers you fondly from the
Brilliant.
Johnny Young Talent School days.
And from Mighty Good.
Yeah. And so he's now living with his family in
US.
Nashville.
Nashville, yeah, and it's just done an American tour.
Yes, and is releasing a new album, single out very soon.
No, it's lovely to watch kids that you've had an influence on at some point, because they become like your own family. And they grow up and they go off into different parts of the world, and often you lose contact with them, but thanks to Facebook you often can catch up with them very easily.
Well, it was a great interview. He had plenty of time, so we chatted all about you. Your ears were probably burning. And about his time with you at the now Mighty Good Talent School, and about his time on Idol and how that affected his, career going forward.
Well, that's one of the things a lot of people don't really know a lot about until you talk to them after the event. If they didn't shoot to, monumental fame afterwards. I've also had the pleasure of interviewing quite a few, and I've worked with quite a few of them at Carol's. And it's quite interesting to hear everything was rising up, and then suddenly the show was over. They didn't get the hit record, the agent dropped them, and suddenly they were back to where they started. And yet they were famous, but they had nowhere to go.
Yes.
Wes built his own career back up again.
Yeah.
And there's many other names of people like that, like Sally Polyronis, who was in the original first TV series of, they ended up calling the group Bardot, and she was one of the girls in Bardot. And she was working for us when she went along to audition and then left the show that we were doing to go to do that. And it was all hush, hush, secret. And then suddenly this first TV pop group appeared. So tracking those people has been lovely over the years to see how they've developed and grown up.
And
And that must be for you too, to a degree.
Oh, yes, it's amazing to speak to, as I say, all of those heroes. I went to the Bridgeway and the Arkaba and the Findon and the stage.
And hearing the backstories of their life as well. Because you only saw that one image.
That's right.
So what music is your music?
I'm probably an 80s rock chick. I like the Angels and Cold Chisel.
Nothing wrong with it.
So I've spoken to the Brewster brothers and I think most of the Angels and a few members of Cold Chisel, Don Walker and Ian Moss, and I just have to pinch myself, But just going back to the music show, so we were nominated for season 3 for an Antenna Award, and that's probably why we're here, because we met there.
Yes,
and congratulations on your win.
Thank you. I thought I won for the show, not me personally. That was a real surprise. But that was lovely, absolutely lovely to be recognised for what you've done. How long have you been doing the shows on radio?
On radio, 2019, so 5 years.
Right. So it's sort of newish for you in a way. It's a new career.
Oh, absolutely.
But the point you made before, this thing of retiring, don't think of retiring. Think of what's the next chapter in my life.
Exactly. There's so many things that people can do, as I say, to stay connected with their community. I'm also on the committee for Ovarian Cancer Challenge. So there's so many great causes out there that would love your help.
In whatever way.
Yeah.
Can you do stuff on radio, on your podcasts, where you mention and talk about that?
I occasionally do, yeah. If something comes up about it.
But that's the point, yes, like you were just talking about Wes Carr, that connection nobody would necessarily know. No, I agree. No, it is the joy, and I must say I've had the same joy talking to people for the last 13 years, because we've talked to people from all walks of life about so many different things, and it's just been lovely and such an education.
Oh, absolutely. So other than the musicians, for Disgracefully Graceful, I interviewed a lady who wrote her first book in her 70s, never written before in her life, and published a book. Also another lady in her 70s who made a documentary. 70 years old, decides she's going to make a documentary.
It's never too late.
That's right. Don't let age stop you from doing anything.
Not only that, but you don't want to be on your deathbed and think, I wish I had it, bye.
Yep.
Yeah. We really want to live our lives completely. Speaking of which, we have to live our lives after this break. Our guest has been Cheryl Lee Crabtree, better known as
the Radio Chick.
Did you name yourself?
I did.
What brought that up?
I've got no idea. It just came into my head and I liked it and I stuck with it.
So is that how you introduce yourself every time you go on air?
Not only for my podcasts, not necessarily at Coast or Radio Adelaide.
Right. So this is a Monday night. Just say, this is a Monday night. What time are you on Monday night?
10 till midnight.
And where?
Coast FM 88.7.
There you go. Coast FM is obviously a community-based radio station. What funds that?
Sponsorship.
The bit of sponsorship,
yeah.
And again, with radio, community radio is so valuable in a town like ours, because most of the time we're getting feeds from the eastern states, so we're not hearing about local things either.
No, absolutely. They pride themselves. Coast FM, we are 24/7 live and local. There's nothing coming from interstate.
Yeah.
There's always somebody in that studio pressing the buttons and moving the dials.
And it's about being local.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Very
we can talk about community issues, what's going on in our community. Yeah.
And the TV show, which will be on 44 and 31 in Melbourne.
Brighter TV, the new series, is about to
Just
be
quickly,
submitted.
what is it about? What's the series about? Half an hour.
Yeah, about half an hour, give or take with the commercial.
Okay.
We interview artists and also provide live footage of their gigs. We concentrate on South Australians, but my gig for the show is the Legend series. So I get to interview all my heroes, many of the names that I've discussed.
The fan club.
Yeah.
The fan club of performers that you've created.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
Cheryl, it's been great talking with you. Thank you so much. It's been great to get to know you as well. Good luck with the shows, the podcasts and everything else that you're doing. So, folks, until next time on OurTime, Keep yourselves nice till then.